The room didn't sound like a place where people fight for their lives. It sounded like waiting. A machine breathing beside the bed. A clock pressing seconds into the wall. Plastic curtains whispering every time someone passed. But never stopping. My phone lit the ceiling before it made a sound. A photo. Smiling faces. Sunglasses. A railing. Blue water stretching forever. Finally on the cruise. Much needed family time. I looked at the screen. Then at the phone taped to my arm. And I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. I wasn't forgotten. I was postponed. My name is Daniel. I'm the kind of man who believed showing up mattered more than being noticed. I raised children who weren't biologically mine. Worked late so others could rest. Lowered my voice because peace always felt more valuable than being right. And now I was alone in a hospital room, while my family sailed into the sunset. This story isn't about rage. It's about what happens in silence, when no one thinks it matters, and how that silence changes everything. If stories about family, aging, dignity, and quiet strength matter to you, subscribe to the channel. These stories are told slowly for a reason. And before we continue, tell me where you're watching from today. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been admitted for what they called observation. That word makes things sound temporary. Manageable. Everyone promised they'd check in. We'll come tomorrow. Just rest, we'll handle things. You'll be home before you know it. Then the cruise came up again. They talked about it at my bedside like it was harmless. Like it didn't touch me. It's already paid for. It's only a week. We'll FaceTime. A week can be a long time when nights don't end. The first few days, I told myself not to be dramatic. Nurses came and went. Meals arrived cold. Shadows climbed the wall every evening as the sun left quietly. Then the photos started coming. Breakfast buffets. Deck chairs. Sunset toasts. I noticed something then. No one asked how I was feeling. Only how things were looking. That night, a nurse adjusted my phone and noticed my phone still glowing. No visitors? She asked. I shook my head. She pulled up a chair anyway. Didn't rush. Didn't try to cheer me up. She just stayed for a moment. Like my presence mattered. That moment stayed with me longer than all the messages combined. Because silence isn't empty. When someone chooses to stay. After she left, the room felt quieter. But clearer. I thought about all the years I'd waited. For appreciation. For acknowledgement. For someone to notice I was tired too. And lying there, listening to a ship's horn echo faintly from a video on my phone, I made a decision. Not out of anger. But understanding. If they could leave so easily, I could stop waiting just as quietly. And that was the moment I began to disappear. Sometimes the loudest truth arrives without raising its voice. The hospital nights stretched longer than the days. During the day, there were routines. Vitals. Medication. Brief conversations that ended with polite smiles. At night, everything slowed. The lights dimmed. The hallway softened. And the silence grew heavier, like it had weight. That was when the phone became loud. Not with sound. With color. Another photo appeared just after midnight. My son, leaning against a glass railing, drink in hand. Behind him, the ocean stretched endlessly calm, like nothing bad could possibly exist anywhere near it. Best decision we've made in years. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the tray table. The heart monitor kept its steady rhythm. The phone dripped. Somewhere down the hall, someone coughed, then went quiet again. I tried to remember the last time one of them had sat where I was now, waiting for answers they didn't want to hear. Earlier that evening, a doctor stood at the foot of my bed. He spoke carefully. Not frighteningly. Carefully. Words like complications and monitoring floated between us. Have you notified your family? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded, satisfied. Good. Support matters. After he left, I laughed once. Not loudly. Just a breath that came out wrong. Support matters. The next morning, a nurse brought breakfast and asked if I wanted help opening the oatmeal. I said yes. That surprised me. I used to open jars without thinking. Lift boxes. Fix things. Now I needed help with a thin plastic lid, and the only people who noticed were strangers on rotating shifts. Later that day, my daughter posted a short video. Laughter. Music. Wind in her hair. Grateful red heart. I wondered what she was grateful for. I typed a message. Deleted it. Typed another. How's the weather? Delete. Enjoy yourselves? Delete. I realized I didn't know how to speak without pretending I wasn't hurting. And I was too tired to pretend anymore. That afternoon passed slowly. A volunteer came by with a cart of books. I chose one without looking, just to have something to hold. The pages smelled faintly of dust and hands that weren't mine. In the early evening, I tried calling. It rang until voicemail answered. I didn't leave a message. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't want to beg for space in a life that had clearly moved on without me. That night, another post appeared. A group photo. Everyone smiling. Arms wrapped around each other. Family is everything. I stared at that line longer than the picture. Family is everything. In the room, the clock clicked forward. The monitor hummed. The chair by the window stayed empty. I wasn't being punished. I wasn't being rejected outright. I was being left. And there's a particular kind of pain in that. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't demand an apology, because no one thinks they've done anything wrong. As I turned off the phone and placed it in the drawer, something inside me settled. Not bitterness. Not resentment. Understanding. If my absence didn't interrupt their joy, then my presence had always been optional. And once you understand that, you stop waiting for people to notice the empty chair. You start deciding what to do with it. Some truths don't arrive with words. They arrive with who never shows up. The nurse's name was Elena. I noticed it because she was the first person in days who didn't talk to me from the doorway. Most people stayed standing, clipboard in hand, body angled outward, already halfway gone. Elena didn't. She checked my chart, adjusted the four, and then, without asking, pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. Not for long. Not dramatically. Just long enough to change the room. "You've been very quiet," she said. I smiled, because that's what you do when someone notices something true. "I've had practice." She nodded, like she understood exactly what that meant. She didn't ask about my family. She didn't say they'll be back soon. She didn't fill the space with hope she couldn't verify. She sat there while the monitor hummed and the clock tapped time into the wall. After a moment, she asked, "Do you want the window open a bit?" I did. Cool air slid in, carrying the faint sound of traffic from somewhere below. Life, continuing. I closed my eyes and let it settle on my skin. "You haven't had visitors?" she said gently. "No," I replied. "They're on a trip." She didn't raise her eyebrows. Didn't make a face. She only said, "I'm glad you're not alone right now." That sentence stayed with me. Not "you won't be alone." Not "they'll come." Just, right now matters too. Later that afternoon, she brought my medication and explained each one slowly, even though it was all written in the chart. She spoke to me like I was still capable of understanding my own body. When she finished, she didn't rush out. She asked where I'd worked, what I used to enjoy, whether I preferred quiet or noise. No one had asked me my preferences in a long time. I told her about fixing things, about leaving places better than I found them. She smiled. That's a good way to move through life. When she left, the room felt different. Not warmer. Not happier. More human. That evening, another photo came through. A group shot. Everyone dressed for dinner. Candles. Linen. Smiles arranged carefully for the camera. I didn't open it. Instead, I looked at the empty chair Elena had used and thought about how strange it must look from the outside, someone choosing to sit when they didn't have to. That's when I realized something important. Presence isn't accidental. People either choose it, or they don't. The next morning, the doctor told me I'd be discharged soon. Recovery would take time, but I was stable. He asked again if someone would be picking me up. "I'll arrange something," I said. He nodded. No judgment. Just another box checked. When Elena came by one last time, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "It's just a list," she said. "Transportation numbers. A few places that help with short-term stays, if you need them." I looked at it. "You didn't have to do this." She shrugged lightly. "Someone once did it for me." After she left, I held that paper longer than I needed to. Because in a week filled with posts and captions and smiling faces from far away, the most meaningful thing anyone had given me was time. And that's when I understood something clearly. If a stranger could choose to stay, then disappearing from those who chose not to wasn't running away. It was making room. Sometimes the people who matter most are the ones who sit down. The discharge papers came on a Wednesday morning. The nurse placed them on the tray and explained everything slowly: medications, follow-ups, warning signs to watch for. I nodded and signed where she pointed. My hand shook a little. Not from fear. From how final it felt to put my name on something no one else would co-sign. "Is someone picking you up?" she asked. "I'll handle it," I said. She accepted that without hesitation. There was something respectful about that. Being believed when you say you can manage, even when you're clearly tired. I packed my things into a small bag. Phone charger. A paperback I hadn't opened. The sweater that still smelled faintly of home. Before leaving, I stood and looked at the room one last time. The chair by the window was empty again. The clock kept tapping. The machine breathed without asking. I didn't message my family. Not to punish them. Because I didn't want to explain. Explanations are heavy. They invite debate. Apologies that arrived too late. Promises meant to ease guilt, not change behavior. Lying in that bed had taught me something important. Clarity doesn't need consensus. At the curb, a medical transport van idled. The driver helped me in, careful, quiet. As we pulled away, I watched the hospital slide out of view, floor by floor, until it became just another building in the mirror. My phone buzzed once. Another photo from the cruise. Sunlight on water. A caption about making memories. I didn't open it. Instead, I did something I hadn't planned, but felt right. I deleted the apps. Not dramatically. Not all at once. One by one. The screen grew quieter. Blanker. Calmer. The van hummed. The city passed. I'd arranged a short stay at a small recovery place on the edge of town. Nothing special. A clean room. A window that opened. Meals served without questions. The woman at the desk greeted me by name and showed me where the kettle was. "Take your time," she said. "There's no rush here." No rush. That night, I slept without my phone lighting the walls. The quiet felt different, intentional, not empty. In the morning, I sat by the window and drank tea while the day arrived slowly. Birds argued in the hedges. A delivery truck backed up and beeped twice. Ordinary sounds. Life continuing. Around noon, a voicemail came in. My daughter's voice, bright, hurried. "Dad! Just checking in. Signal's been spotty. Call me when you can." I listened once. Then I saved it and set the phone down. Later, a message from my son. Shorter. Concerned now. "Hey, everything okay?" I didn't reply. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. I was choosing not to perform my pain for reassurance that would fade as soon as the ship docked. That afternoon, I took a short walk with the cane the nurse had suggested. The path looped around a garden. I sat on a bench halfway through and rested. No one hurried me. No one asked for updates. Watching light move across the leaves, I understood something clearly. Leaving without announcement isn't abandonment. Sometimes it's alignment. I wasn't disappearing to make a point. I was stepping into a life that didn't require proof of my importance. When the cruise ended, they would look for me. Messages would stack up. Questions would come. But for now, the quiet was mine. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for anyone to notice. Sometimes peace begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. They returned on a Sunday. I know that because the missed calls all arrived within the same hour, one after another, like footsteps echoing down a hallway no one had walked in for days. My phone vibrated on the table while I was eating soup. Real soup. Hot. Something I could taste again. I watched the screen light up and go dark. Dad. 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 Then my daughter's name. Then my son's. I didn't pick up. Not out of spite. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. When you've spent days listening to machines breathe for you, you learn the difference between urgency and panic. This wasn't urgency. This was panic, the kind that arrives when people realize the story kept going without them. The voicemails followed quickly. Where are you? We just got back. The house is locked, call us. Then, after a pause, Dad, this isn't funny. Funny. I let that word pass without responding. I imagined them standing in the hallway, luggage still by the door, the quiet settling in too fast. No hospital bag. No discharge papers on the counter. No note explaining where I'd gone. Just absence. The kind that answers questions without speaking. They switched to text messages. Are you okay? Please respond. We're worried. Worried had arrived late. But it had arrived. I didn't block them. I didn't turn the phone off. I let the messages come and go like waves, each one softer than the last, the certainty draining out of the words. That evening, my daughter left a longer voicemail. Her voice cracked halfway through. We didn't know it was that bad, she said. We thought you were stable. We thought you'd tell us if it was serious. I closed my eyes. I had told them. Just not in the language they listened to. The next day, my son tried a different tone, calmer, measured. Let's talk when you're ready, he said. We just want to understand. Understand. Understanding often follows inconvenience. I sat by the window and watched a man across the courtyard water his plants. He moved slowly, deliberately, humming to himself. No one rushed him. No one asked him to justify the time he took. That felt important. 2 days later they showed up. I hadn't told them where I was, but they figured it out the way people do when they finally stop assuming and start paying attention. My daughter knocked first. Softly. Carefully. Like someone unsure they deserved an answer. I opened the door. They both looked different. Not guilty, uncertain. Like people who had lost the map they thought they were holding. You could have told us, my son said. I could have, I replied. And you could have stayed. Silence settled between us. Not angry. Just heavy. We didn't mean to leave you alone, my daughter said. I know, I said gently. You just did. There was nothing left to explain. I didn't invite them in. I didn't send them away. I told them I was safe. That I needed rest. That I would reach out when I was ready. And then I closed the door. Not as punishment. As boundary. Because for the first time, they were feeling the quiet I'd lived in. And the truth was simple. When you return to an empty life, you finally understand what absence sounds like. Silence teaches what words never could. I didn't go far. That's the part people misunderstand when they hear the word vanished. They imagine distance, another state, another country, a dramatic exit meant to make a point. What I needed wasn't distance. It was quiet. The place I chose sat just beyond the edge of town. Close enough that the same weather still reached me. Far enough that no one would drop by out of habit. A modest recovery residence attached to a small clinic. Nothing polished. Nothing impressive. Just a building that understood patience. My room faced a stand of trees. In the mornings, light filtered through the leaves and landed on the wall in soft, uneven shapes. No beeping machines. No screens lighting up my face. Just birds arguing over nothing important. The first few days, my body did most of the talking. Fatigue has its own language. So does healing. I slept when I needed to. Ate when I was hungry. Took slow walks along a gravel path that looped around a garden no one showed off online, a place that existed whether it was photographed or not. No one asked me to update anyone. No one suggested I check in. That felt new. In the afternoons, I sat with a book I didn't always read. Sometimes I just held it. Having something in your hands can be enough when your thoughts are heavy. A staff member would pass by and nod. Not linger. Not avoid. Just acknowledge. One evening, a woman from the next room sat beside me on the bench outside. We didn't exchange names. We talked about weather patterns, about how light feels different as you get older. It was an easy conversation, the kind that doesn't ask you to perform. That mattered more than I expected. My phone stayed mostly quiet. I checked it once a day, the way you might look out a window. Messages were still there. Softer now. Less frantic. Apologies wrapped in explanations. Promises framed as intentions. I read them without judgment. Then I put the phone back down. I wasn't punishing anyone. I wasn't testing anyone. I was learning how it felt to live without waiting for a response. There's a particular peace in that. I learned my limits again, how far I could walk without resting. Which food settled easily. Which mornings felt heavier than others. I learned to ask for help when I needed it, and to refuse it when I didn't. No one mistook either choice for weakness. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in the window. Thinner. Paler. But steadier. The lines on my face hadn't disappeared, but they looked earned. Like I'd finally stopped fighting the fact that time leaves marks, and that those marks don't make you less worthy of care. I thought about the cruise photos then. How bright they were. How loud with joy. How temporary. What I was building here was quieter. But it lasted through the night. That's when I understood something I'd never allowed myself to believe. You don't disappear to be dramatic. You disappear to hear yourself think. I wasn't hiding from my family. I was finding myself without the noise of expectation. And when you stop arranging your life around being convenient, you begin to see what truly sustains you. Not applause. Not attention. Not even reconciliation. Just the steady rhythm of days that don't ask you to explain why you deserve to be there. Sometimes healing begins where the signal finally fades. They came again a week later. This time, they didn't knock quickly. No urgency in their hands. No phones raised, ready to capture the moment. They stood there quietly, like people who had finally learned the pace of the place they were entering. I invited them in. Not because everything was resolved. Not because I was ready to pretend. But because listening doesn't cost you your dignity. If you already know where the line is. We sat at a small table by the window. Light fell across their faces in a way I hadn't seen before. Less confidence. More care. My daughter spoke first. We were scared, she said. When we came back and you weren't there, it finally felt real. I nodded. It was real before that. She swallowed. My son stared at his hands. We didn't think you were that sick, he said. You never said it was serious. I did, I replied gently. Just not loudly. Silence settled between us. Not the awkward kind. The honest kind. I told them about the nights. The machines. The empty chair. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I described. And description does more than blame ever could. They listened. That mattered. I don't want apologies built on guilt, I said finally. I want awareness built on presence. My daughter nodded slowly. We want to do better. I believe you, I said. But better looks different now. I told them what that meant. No assumptions. No disappearing acts dressed up as necessity. No posts before presents. And most of all, no treating my survival as something that could wait. They didn't argue. They didn't overpromise. They accepted the boundaries quietly. And that told me more than any emotional speech ever could. After they left, I sat alone again. But it wasn't the same alone. This solitude had shape. Intention. It didn't echo. I thought back to the hospital room, the ticking clock, the glowing phone, the sound of joy happening somewhere else. And I realized something. What hurt most wasn't being left. It was being left quietly. Because silence can feel like confirmation if you stay in it too long. But silence can also teach. It taught me that love doesn't announce itself with captions. That care doesn't wait for convenience. That presence is the most honest currency we have as we grow older. I didn't vanish to punish my family. I vanished to remember myself. And when I returned, slowly, carefully, it was with clarity instead of expectation. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible when you needed someone close, if you've ever sat in a quiet room wondering who would notice if you stopped trying, you're not alone. Stories like this exist because so many people live them in silence. If you want to hear more stories about family, aging, dignity, and quiet strength, consider subscribing to the channel. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes, the loudest lesson life teaches us is simple. Love isn't proven by where you travel. It's proven by who stays when the room is quiet. The silence didn't break me. It showed me who I was.